For today's video, I'll be comparing guppies with Medaka ricefish, as I've received several questions about the two species on my videos recently, so I wanted to try and clear things up. Although there are a lot of similarities between the two species, they do have their own advantages and disadvantages over each other, which may make one of them a better fit for you. So let's start with appearance, because this is often the main reason why people confuse Medaka with guppies. At first glance they do look quite similar because both are colourful and very active smaller fish, but there are some key differences to note. Guppies tend to have larger, more elaborate tails, especially on the males, who tend to display a wider range of different colours on the same fish. Medaka ricefish, on the other hand, often come in solid colour strains where a single fish will usually be one single colour. Now there are some single colour guppy varieties and a few multicolor Medaka varieties in the hobby, but these do tend to be less common. Although guppies are famous for their very wide variety of colour strains in the hobby, Medaka aren't actually that far behind in the grand scheme of things. There's currently over 400 different Medaka varieties for sale in Japan, but unfortunately most of those aren't available here in the West yet. When it comes to size, the females of both species are generally larger than the males. However, female Medaka tend only to be slightly larger than the males, whereas female guppies can be almost twice the size of their male counterparts. So overall, I'm classing this section as a draw because both species offer a wide range of different colour options. As I mentioned, there are far fewer Medaka varieties in the West right now, but as their popularity keeps increasing, more and more people are using transcontinental shipping services to import rarer fish from Japan and Thailand. Next, I want to talk about the availability and cost of both species. Guppies are one of the most popular fish in the aquarium hobby, so it's no surprise that standard guppies are very easy to find and usually quite cheap. Fancy guppies are fish that have been line bred for specific colours, patterns and tail shapes, and these can be more expensive and more difficult to track down, especially if you have your heart set on a very specific line. But for most hobbyists, the regular varieties available in local shops are more than enough and they have plenty of colour on them. Medaka, on the other hand, are still relatively uncommon in the West. Thankfully, their popularity is rapidly increasing and more people are discovering how hardy and easy to keep these little fish actually are. At the time of recording, the platinum, black and orange strains of Medaka are becoming easier to find across the UK, and if you are from the northeast of England, then Gateshead Guppies does currently have all three available for sale. From what I've seen from other creators in the fish keeping space, the same trend is happening on mainland Europe and North America, where the platinum, black and orange varieties are becoming easier to find. As I touched on earlier, more people are also starting to import rare strains of Medaka from Japan, Thailand and Vietnamese breeders. Although the prices of Medaka do seem to fluctuate depending on supply and demand, thankfully prices have came down a lot since last year, where they did peak up because these are very easy to breed and a lot more people are keeping them now. So at the time of recording at least, Medaka prices are usually only slightly more expensive than male guppies. So I do think guppies push slightly ahead on this section because they are slightly cheaper but a lot easier to find, especially if you're wanting a specific colour, but I honestly think this is going to change for Medaka soon as their popularity keeps increasing. Next up we have temperature tolerances, and this is one of the biggest reasons many people, myself included, have been drawn to keeping Medaka ricefish. Guppies are often listed by reputable sources as being able to tolerate temperatures as low as 17 degrees Celsius or 63 degrees Fahrenheit. But this data is usually sourced from historical climate data based on their native habitat ranges. Unfortunately, modern guppies in the aquarium hobby have been heavily line bred and are far less hardy than their wild ancestors. Due to this, I do keep my guppies at a minimum temperature of 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit just to add that little bit of extra wiggle room as a safety net, and my current group of 4 male guppies did just fine over the winter. Medaka ricefish, on the other hand, trace their lineage back to 2 main types of the genus that are native to Japan. Because of this, their natural range includes regions of Japan where winter temperatures can drop below 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, often with ice forming over the surface of their ponds and rice paddies. Personally, I keep my Medaka indoors in my fish room where the room temperature gets to around 18 degrees Celsius or 64 degrees Fahrenheit over the winter, and my Medaka handle those temperatures with ease. So this section was very close to being a draw, but I do think I'd push Medaka ahead ever so slightly just because it lets you remove the heater from your tank and save you that ongoing electricity bill. Next up we have Behaviour, and in all honesty, Guppies and Medaka behave almost exactly the same in my aquariums. They are very similar fish. I know that some sources describe both species as being surface-dwelling fish, but I've found that they both split their time fairly evenly between the top, middle and bottom areas of their fish tanks. In my experience, Guppies are more active and more hyper than their Medaka counterparts, but Medaka are still active fish that are very entertaining to watch. The males from each species will occasionally spar with each other to establish dominance and maintain the hierarchy in the tank, especially during breeding season, but this is usually limited to their own species in the tank and they won't bother their tank mates. I also want to point out that neither Guppies or Medaka are true shoreland fish, meaning that they don't tend to stay in tight groups, but I would class them as being social fish. By that I mean they definitely seem to be more active and happy to swim around and go off by themselves in tanks where there's a couple of others of their own species in the tank with them. So for this section, even though the Guppies are slightly more active and hyper in their tanks, they're both very comparable, so I am going to class this one as a draw. Next up we have tank mates, and I just want to say that I only like to speak about things that I've personally done with my aquariums, and I don't have an extensive list of compatible species to share here. That's because I usually keep my Medaka or my Guppies in species-specific tanks where they are the only species of fish present in the setup. Now, to be clear, this isn't due to aggression or any compatibility issues or anything like that, it's just my personal preference because I think a tank full of just Guppies or just Medaka looks amazing. I've seen some sources say that this also helps to bring out their natural behaviour and also increase activity levels, and with both species of fish having plenty of colour varieties available, you can mix and match the colours as required to get plenty of variation in there. That said, I have kept both species of fish with different types of Neocaridina shrimp such as cherry shrimp. I've also kept them with Armano shrimp, Neurite snails, ram's horn snails and even water louse. For the most part, I haven't had any issues keeping Guppies or Medaka with any of those species as tank mates, but I do want to say the vast majority of my experience with Guppies is with males, as it's a quick and easy way to avoid overpopulation. And that brings me on to the next thing, because I do currently have a female Endler Guppy hybrid who is slightly larger than the typical male guppy. A couple of weeks back I did find 2 partially eaten water louse in her tank, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I didn't see her try and eat them, but a few days later I did witness her trying to flip another water louse over onto its back, probably to try and disable it to make it easier to eat. After that, I moved the remaining water louse in that tank back to their original tank just to make sure they were safe, but I honestly do think it was the female Endler in that tank that took out the other 2 water louse after seeing that. It's also worth noting that she is actually an Endler Guppy hybrid. A full-sized pure female guppy is even larger than her and may try and go after shrimp in the tank too. So yeah, that's just some things to keep in mind when you are trying to find tank mates for your Guppies, but with my Medaka, they just keep themselves to themselves. Even though the females are a little bit bigger than the males in my tanks, they just leave the shrimp and everything else alone. So moving on to feeding, and honestly, Guppies and Medaka are ravenous little omnivores that will eat anything. And by that, to my memory at least, they have eaten everything that I've put in the tank for them to eat, and sometimes I even see them trying to steal the food off my shrimp that are in the same tanks as them. I've also seen my guppies eat decaying plant leaves in their tanks multiple times, and I've also seen guppies and Medaka snacking on algae growth in their tanks too. My current staple foods for both species are Fluval Bug Bites Light Blue formula because it has that smaller granule size, and I also use NT Labs Micro Crumb and Hikari First Bites. If I'm completely honest, once I finish this batch of NT Labs Micro Crumb, I probably will just stick with Bug Bites and First Bites moving forward. Now I know that Hikari First Bites is technically a fry food for baby fish, but it's worked extremely well for nano fish like Chili Rasboras, Endlers, Celestial Pearl Danios, as well as my guppies in Medaka. And the best part is, if you choose to use Hikari First Bites with your adult guppies in Medaka, it means you also have fry food ready to go when they start breeding, and it really won't take long. But the main point to take from this section is that both species are very easy to feed, neither are picky eaters, so you shouldn't have any problems finding something they will eat in your area. Next up we have tank size, and this one's very straightforward. I currently keep both species in groups of 3 to 5 in their own individual 25 litre or 6.6 US gallon aquariums. And then from there you can pretty much scale up the stocking levels as required for larger tanks. I also want to point out that I do have a dedicated 29 gallon grout tank for my Medaka fry to move them over to away from the adults out of the smaller tanks when needed. On top of that, even though I do want to breed my Endler Guppy hybrids more in one of these 25 litre tanks, I have multiple people as well as a local aquatic shop who is happy to take as many Endler Guppy fry off my hands as they can if I do have problems with overpopulation. Other than that though, both species are easy to stock in most popular tank sizes because of their small size, making it a great choice for nano tanks and above. However, it is important that if you want to keep males and females in the same tank, you definitely do need to factor in how quickly both species can grow their population. Next up is tank setup, and once again there's a lot of similarities between guppies and Medaka. I personally prefer the look of planted tanks anyway, so I keep a lot of plants in my tanks, but I do highly recommend adding multiple site breaks to either species tank through either decorations, hardscape, fake plants or live plants. If you are going to be taking the live plant route, then broadleaf varieties of Anubias, Echinodorus, Cryptocorine and Hygrophila are all excellent choices for site breaks. But the main points that I'm trying to get across is that providing hiding spots and site breaks in this type of tank offers two main purposes. The first is that it gives the less dominant males a chance to escape the attention of the more dominant ones who are constantly trying to spar with them to maintain the dominance hierarchy in the tank. The second is that it allows females to take a break from the persistent male attention during breeding season and just get out of the way of the attention if they want. Now I do have filterless tanks for both species, and provided your plant choices and setup is optimal, it's quite easy to do, but if you are a beginner or new to planted tanks, I highly recommend that you use a filter. Ideally, your filter of choice should have an adjustable flow because strong currents may make it more difficult for your male guppies to swim around. But in general, both guppies and Medaka are pretty easy going and have a very beginner friendly tank setup provided you put a couple of hiding spots in there and you have minimal water flow. So next up are water parameters excluding temperature, since we covered that earlier in the video because it is a little more in depth with these. And starting with Medaka, because these are very adaptable and generally do well across a wide range of different pH and water hardness levels. In the vast majority of cases, I honestly think Medaka will thrive in standard dechlorinated tap water without any special adjustments or reverse osmosis units or anything like that, making them very beginner friendly and easy to keep. The general recommendation is a pH of between 6.5 and 8.5, but there is some flexibility on the lower end of that because I keep them at 6.4 and there's no problems with my Medaka. For water hardness, they generally tolerate anything from 5 up to 25 DGH, and a lot of normal tap water will fall within that range. Guppies, on the other hand, are slightly more challenging because they naturally come from harder water environments and have evolved to absorb extra minerals through their gills. This means that when kept in soft water setups, guppies can develop various health issues, most commonly calcium deficiencies such as curvature of the spine because the extra minerals are not there. Thankfully, if you have soft tap water like myself, there's some very easy fixes. The main one that I use is just to use Sirius Stone as hardscape in the tank because it slowly raises your water hardness to within the range guppies prefer. As a general guideline, aim to keep guppies in a water with a pH of between 7.0 and 8.5 and a hardness of between 8 and 30 DGH. So for this section I am giving Medaka the win because they are good to go in most tap water provided you add a little bit of dechlorinator to keep the water safe for your microorganisms. But even then, it is easy to tweak soft water to make it suitable for guppies like I covered earlier, and Sirius Stone is cheap and easy to find because it's so popular on the aquascaping side of the hobby. So next up we have Hardiness, and just to keep things simple, this one is an easy win for Medaka and it's not even comparable unfortunately. Even though there is an absolutely huge variety of Medaka rice fish available in Japan, the more common lines that we see here in the West tend to be very hardy and beginner friendly. Now they have been line bred because they look nothing like wild Medaka rice fish, but they are very resilient fish that can handle a wide range of conditions, making them an excellent choice for beginners in the hobby. But over the last few decades, guppies have been line bred for specific colours, patterns and tail shapes. As a result, their genetic strength and overall hardness have definitely declined and they are nowhere near as hardy as they once were. Buying assorted guppies, which are thankfully usually cheaper from your local aquatic store that are not bred for specific traits, can sometimes give you better odds of survival because they just mix different lines of guppies together to breed as many as possible to meet demand. But in my experience and what I've seen a lot of other people say when they comment on my videos, if you do choose guppies, a lot of your success is going to be determined before you even put the fish in your tank, and it's just down to genetics. Now to be clear, I'm not trying to put you off guppies, I'm just trying to give a realistic example. I have guppies in my own fish room, I definitely want more, but the loss rate will be higher with guppies as far as I'm concerned compared to Medaka. So yeah, for this section it is definitely an easy win for Medaka rice fish. So moving on to breeding, and unlike the vast majority of the fish that I keep, I've actually intentionally bred both of these species, or technically it was an Endler Guppy hybrid, but I'm still classing that as counting. Now the first step is making sure that you have both male and females of the species in the tank. With guppies, this is very straightforward because males have a modified anal fin called a gonopodium and females have the standard anal fin, making it obvious to tell the difference, and females tend to be larger and less colourful. Now Medaka are a little trickier to sex, but there are still some clear differences between them too, and once again it comes down to their anal fins. Females generally have a more triangular shaped fin, whereas the males tend to have a larger fin where opposite sides are roughly the same lengths as each other. I will leave a link to this Reddit thread in the description because it's the most helpful guide I've personally found on how to sex Medaka accurately. It's worth pointing out that you can also use that information to make sure you only have males in your tank to avoid any overpopulation issues, so that's worth noting too. But once you've confirmed you have both male and females of the species, it really is as easy as just leaving them to do their thing. It's also worth noting that both guppies and Medaka have been known to eat their young, so if you're trying to maximise your fry survival, then moving the baby fish into their own grow-out tank is recommended. So yeah, when it comes to breeding, I'm classing it as a draw because both species are very easy to breed. So to sum it all up, I personally think that Medaka do have a slight edge over guppies, especially for beginners. Mainly this is because they are just a hardier fish that is easier to keep, and you can keep them in room temperature tanks without a heater, helping to keep your costs as low as possible. The downsides of Medaka is that they are not as widely available as guppies at the time of recording, and they do tend to cost a little bit more, but this is improving year on year as their popularity increases. But guppies are beautiful fish, and they are a great option if you can source them from a reputable breeder or shop, because healthy lines are getting more challenging to find. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know I'm a big fan of both species, and I currently keep both in my fish room, and I plan to get more of each species moving forward, but if I could only choose one, I would probably go with Medaka over guppies. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end, and I hope it's helped you choose the best fish for your needs, because these are both great species. Thanks for watching the video, have a good day and good luck with your guppies or Medaka.